All right, guys, welcome to episode 22 of the Liberalish podcast. I'm joined today by the original three. That is Carly and Marcus over here. So shout out to you guys. Ryan, he is on a top secret mission in North Carolina. He will disclose those details when he gets back next week. All right. So first off, thank you to our first-time listeners or to any of our returning listeners. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. So what we just discuss like kitchen table politics from a Black point of view. We kind of think that like news today kind of gives like a little white edge to everything. So we're just here to combat that. What we're going to talk about today, we're just going to go over a couple of headlines, talk about some Congress, and we're just going to end the pod off of a little off-topic conversations and talk about our boy Andrew Cuomo. All right. So first things first, I don't know if you guys saw I almost said Princess Diana. Shit. I don't know if you guys saw like the Harry and Meghan interview with Oprah last night.
Yeah.
I did.
All right. So I was kind of blown away by it. I mean, like I knew it was going to be explosive, but then when I tuned in, I was like, shit, this is really explosive. So like, what were some of the key takeaways that you guys took away from that interview?
I think the biggest one was the one about his skin color. Because if you look at Harry, and then you look at Meghan, you could kind of make the presumption that he was going to come out a little on the lighter side. So I was really confused as to the point of the question, because it's like, I think you just wanted to make it known that this was like this was like going to be like a basically like you think of it as a Black kid, when really, if you really look at him, he's really like what is he, like a fourth Black? He's really a white looking baby, and that's no shade or anything, but I kind of feel like it's interesting to me how us, kind of like in the Black community look at Meghan and we see her as like a lighter biracial woman. Like people pick and choose how they want to identify her. Some people give her, like she's a Black woman. Some people say, oh, she's mixed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I always thought it was interesting how they treated her as a Black woman when I didn't really feel like it was necessary. Like I felt like it didn't really come up much. Like when she was like on Suits, and like when she was
I love that show.
Again, like she was on a Deal or No Deal or whatever. She's just Meghan. Like, and so I feel like it was interesting how you constantly were reminded that she was like the first Black person to be in the royal family. So I was kind of surprised that kind of trickled down to their son, because I really didn't think that would be an issue at all, because I knew he was going to come out like rather pale.
So I'll just shoot them some bail. Genetics can be kind of funny sometimes. I don't know, like if you see like in Black families, there's like that random super light skinned kid like Marcus.
Right.
So like that happens. So it could go the opposite way. I don't know. They were making a big deal about that, but
that was my point. Like it was a big deal about something that I felt was so small. And I also thought the flipping of the narrative, because there was the story that Meghan made Kate cry, when in reality it was the other way around. And it kind of was like an ongoing theme that a lot of information that was getting out to the public was inaccurate, and a lot of Meghan's frustrations came from the fact that they weren't telling the truth, because she even said it herself, like if you just tell them the truth, maybe they'll understand. But they were constantly being fed lies, which she felt was coming from within the palace, which she consistently refers to as the institution.
Yeah, the institution or the firm, one of those two.
Yeah.
What was like really shocking to me? It was actually two things that really stood out to me, right? Like obviously what you said, Carly, that was also shocking. But for Prince Harry, his dad completely cut him off, like financially, and pulled like his security detail too.
Right.
I thought that was shocking. Granted, like we did see what happened to his mom, right? Mm-hmm. And then like he's kind of saying like the same things that were kind of building up to that is happening with my wife. Right. And like it seemed like Charles didn't really care or showed sympathy. Like he stopped taking his calls. He wanted everything in writing. Mm-hmm. So I was like really, really kind of shocked by that. Though, like, how can you do this to your own kid? Yeah, well, that's his kid. like at the end of the day, that's your son. That's your flesh and blood right there.
Right,
and you're just kind of like, screw it.
Or do you think? And this is interesting for me because I was like, maybe it's because at some point during the interview, I think towards the latter part, Oprah goes, they start talking, and he's like, I felt trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My brother and my father are trapped, and I think a part of it is I'm so used to this life that I don't, like he even said, if it wasn't for Meghan, I probably would have never left. And I think it took him viewing it through her eyes to really see the cracks in his family. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when race comes into it, because it's like, why was it a different experience for her? And it had, and I've never seen this before. Like, why are you guys acting like this all of a sudden? But they didn't act that way with Kate. So it kind of poses the question as to what's the difference.
So I'll just say this, like, Marcus, you could probably back me up in this. If you do watch like Premier League or maybe any form of European soccer, one of the biggest things you do hear is how the players complain about the racism in Europe, that they're called different names and stuff like that. Right. Even like in basketball, Giannis and his brothers, they literally, after living their entire lives in Greece, just became citizens, mostly because they're famous basketball players. Right. You know what I mean? So like they kind of had to deal with that. Europe is really racist. And like we never really kind of discussed that. Mm-hmm. And I think like the monarchy was just a reflection of that racism onto like Meghan Markle.
I just think it's kind of like overlooked because to us, it's like America has been like so like shitty late, like for the past, forever. So it's like we look at other countries and we think like maybe it's better over there. When really it's like it's not. I mean, they have things that may appeal to you, like, as far as free education and the government doing more, but you're gonna experience racism.
Another thing with that as well is that I think the privilege, you kind of think that, they're royals, they're wealthy, they're kind of inoculated to racism. You think once you get to a certain level that, they're not going to have these same problems, where in reality, those problems still exist, and they're like, you feel them a lot more because you think that you kind of escape those kind of restrictions or those institutions kind of impose on you. But in reality, like Meghan, just because she had kind of elevated to being a princess, I remember her wedding, that was like a very big deal over here in the States. Huge deal. I was up at like 7 o'clock in the morning watching that. I don't care about any of this shit.
Remember,
but
it
was on, and it was like, we have to stop, and this is our princess. This is she's a royal. That was a very big deal. But I think that despite that, it kind of just put a magnifying glass on the fact that she is Black, and that just kind of kept her from being able to kind of rise up the way that and kind of escape those restrictions that come with that kind of position, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I will say I'm a little confused about that I feel like I didn't get from the interview, and I think this was probably on purpose, because there were some things they weren't, I guess, comfortable talking about and saying names and stuff, but I never quite understood the whole argument about making him a prince, because the media had said it was Meghan and Harry who didn't want him to be a prince. And Meghan was like, well, that wasn't true because it's not our decision to make. And I feel like I didn't really understand why he didn't get one, but but William and Kate's kids do.
Well, William and Kate's kids they have more of a line to the throne than Harry does now, right? Okay. And then the second thing is like Meghan was saying that the way that the firm, like the palace, works is that in order for you to actually receive like money for doing your job or security detail, you need to have a title. And so they wanted Archie to get a title just so that he can get that security detail so that he can be safe. That was the main thing behind it. But the firm denied that request.
Right, which was, I think all in all, the interview was really, I believe the interview got out what Harry and Meghan wanted to get out, which is, I want to say the goal of the interview, because I think it was just for them to finally have a voice, because we've kind of been speculating reasons and whys and hows and all these for a while now. So for them, it's kind of like, this is what happened. And I felt like everyone was painting them out to be these two monsters who were throwing temper tantrums because they got kicked out of the palace, and now they're just spilling the beans. But they were very careful about what they said. They were very, they weren't salacious in the sense that it's like, I'm going to tell you who it was, when it happened. There were some things that they left out. And even Meghan at some point, when Oprah questioned her about who the institution was, she said, I think that would be very damaging for them. Yeah. So even after all this stuff and how you treated this woman and, when she was pregnant and now she's pregnant again, I still consider you in the sense that I'm not trying to ruin your, your position, or if it's an aide or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to ruin you. I just wanted to get my side of the story out.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point.
I do wonder, just a quick question, like this is because I didn't expect this to kind of blow up, but like it did.
Yeah.
But it looks like there's a lot of like negative blowback on the royal family from this. So I guess I'm going to kind of. Do you guys think this is something the royal family can kind of recover from?
Well, I think it's interesting because there's a parallel. A lot of people are making parallels between his mom and Meghan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So for them, it's like, okay, she died in 97. So it's been 23, almost 24 years since she passed away. And it's like, when she divorced his father, she kind of had the same situation. She talked about her experience marrying into the family, what that was, everything that Charles was doing. And so I think people are making connections and seeing like the royal family kind of treated Diana in the same sense and wasn't very welcoming of her and gave her a hard time in a similar way that they're giving Meghan. So it's like, and with social media nowadays, not that I don't think it's really, it's going to impact the royal family, but more people are like communicating with each other and making connections. And I think it's kind of like, you're still up to the same stuff. And Diana died as a result. So it's like, it's enough is enough. It's kind of like a running theme of, of making these women feel uncomfortable or ignoring them and not listening to them when they say that they have a problem, especially nowadays with mental health being such a big thing, which is one of the things Meghan brought up about her mental health and not really trying to get her any help.
So Marcus, I think like to answer your question, like pretty bluntly, I think the monarchy is going to survive, but I think it's going to survive for the wrong reasons. Right. You know how like, how do I say this? Like, for example, like Piers Morgan. So Piers Morgan, he's a TV news personality, right?
Arsenal fan too, yeah.
Don't insult me like that. So basically, like there was a viral clip of a lady that was telling him off about how he was so critical of Meghan Markle, and then after the interview, it was like, well, here you go, right? Just put it back in your face. And the first thing he said was, don't insult our queen like that. So I think like people are going to rally behind the queen because it's probably going to be like a white versus like black thing. And I think like that's
up on the old and,
right.
Like the queen is such a kind lady. It's the queen, and she's talking about the queen. Whatever.
Right. Like I guess like to put it another way, how like initially we had Black Lives Matter, and then like it was countered almost equally with like Blue Lives Matter, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of see the monarchy kind of falling into that lane because look at Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew is also a pretty polarizing figure, but he's still within the institution. You know what I mean? They didn't really kick him out. So I think like there are probably going to be some people who are going to be like, this is us. This is who we are, rallying behind the monarchy. And there's going to be a group that's going to be like, this institution is way, way outdated. It's got to go.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think anything's going to happen. I think the monarchy's going to stay though.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to other headlines. Texas and Mississippi decided to lift their mask mandates, so allowing businesses to reopen at full capacity.
Crazy.
So let me ask you guys this. Why do you think the governors of these states chose to remove their mask mandates now?
I mean, the easy answer is that they don't care.
Exactly.
about their citizens, right? They're, like if you get sick, it's like, that's on you.
That's
I think it was I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Texas had that snowstorm, and one of the I think mayors of Texas was like, "Oh, if you can't, figure out how to kind of survive the storm, that's your problem." So I think it's kind of an extension of that kind of ideology. I mean, you can't. I don't think you can run away from the fact that Texas and Mississippi Republicans really do believe in that idea that government shouldn't be telling people what to do. even if it could save their lives, and kind of, getting in the way of that. So I think they're just I think that's a big part of it, just kind of ideologically, just like, the government shouldn't be telling folks what to do. One, and then two, I think I read somewhere that this is kind of connected to unemployment insurance. People kind of want they want to get people off unemployment so that they don't have to pay out by, I think the date that they're ending it for Texas, I think was March 14th or March 15th, I want to say. But I think that's kind of enters into it as well, which I think was something similar happened with I think back in last May, when I think some states lifted restrictions. I think the same kind of factors were in play. So, I mean, that could also be another reason as well. But that confluence of not wanting to give people money and then not really wanting to be responsible or keeping government out of people's lives, I think, is why we're seeing this in both states, unfortunately.
Wow, I didn't know all that.
Yeah,
I think ultimately it's like an economic thing.
Always comes back to that.
I think in any way you look at it, any direction, whether it's about getting people off unemployment, whether it's about getting people to spend more or whatever, it's more so them just simply prioritizing, the economy over, public health, public safety. And I'm really not shocked, because it's like, we literally just had the conversation about Ted Cruz kind of abandoning the people in Texas during a crisis, right, and just his lackluster display of compassion or decorum as a senator. So I think it's kind of not surprising, because it's kind of like a theme, I guess. Yeah. They're developing a theme of like, and it's a loud message that I feel like these people have to kind of like wake up and realize that these people continuously choose their positions and, the economy, money, corporations, big business, whatever you want to look at it, over you. But it's kind of like they get away with it because, nobody really, I don't know if they don't call them out or if they just don't care or if it's like they're not aware. I don't know. But it's like, I think it's just I don't feel the need to put the people over the economy, because, when you look at it, it's like people fuel the economy. They don't feel that way. Like, they see it as like the economy would kind of be thriving if I didn't have to take care of people, which is not true.
And there's some cherry picking too with the economic numbers. Like, people see, I think anytime there's a report that, spending is up, or all these people are saving all of their money from the last couple of months, there's going to be this big splurge. And that's why people are kind of like, why are we shutting down the economy? Everybody's ready to go spend money. Everything's fine. What are we really doing? So I was going to ask though, Kev, are they kind of just following Governor DeSantis' lead down in Florida? Because I know that Abbott and DeSantis are like best friends. So is that what they're trying to do, or?
So actually, so DeSantis is actually more popular than Abbott in Texas, believe it or not. So DeSantis is, I think, it's him and Mike Pence are the front runners, besides Trump, of course, for the 2024 election. So it's very possible that they're following their lead. It is scary, my dude. It is very, very scary.
That is nuts.
Yeah, DeSantis, like, he's a mini Trump. He's a slightly more competent Trump, but anything that Trump would do, he's been doing it here. He's horrible. I kind of like had like the mindset that like Texas was doing this. I can't speak for Mississippi, but Texas was doing this as like kind of like, oh shit, we have no power in the state. Let's distract the people. And I thought like that was going to be their move. But I think both of you guys had made like really good points. I didn't know like the economics behind it. So I think that's probably more of the reason why there.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. I forgot this. It definitely could have been like a distraction. I guess we'll talk about Cuomo later on, but I think it kind of seems like that's kind of the game plan. Like, let me invent this other controversy to kind of distract people from this more serious thing that's going on. So it's a good point.
Yeah. And like, it's like a tried and true thing that Republicans have done. Like, I know Trump kind of mastered it, but I think under George Bush, it was kind of like, hey, we kind of lied to you about war, but gay rights, how dare you people? It was kind of like that type of thing. So, I don't know, but all right. So moving on though, so Senator Roy Blunt, the number 4 Republican senator, is retiring in 2022. And here's something that was actually really interesting. Mitch McConnell has been working with the Kentucky legislature to strip the governor, because the governor is a Democrat, of his powers to nominate a U.S. senator in the case that he can't finish his term.
He's disgusting.
It is nasty. And
he's a political genius. Unfortunately, he's a Republican.
Right.
It sickens me. It sickens me to say that, but he's so good at maneuvering.
Well, I guess like the plus side is that I don't know if it's medical reasons or what, but it seems like McConnell might not be able to physically finish out his term. So we won't have to see him in the Senate anymore. The downside is that I think he's looking at, I believe his name is Daniel Cameron, the asshole Kentucky AG, to replace him.
And his son-in-law.
And his son-in-law, yeah.
Or grandson-in-law, or something like that.
I think it's his grandson.
His grandson-in-law, right?
No, I think it's his son-in-law.
Okay.
One or the other. Yeah. Anyway. But he doesn't disclose like that they have a connection. Like I think he doesn't at all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. He never disclosed that, but it is what it is, unfortunately. Right. Yeah.
This is good news. McConnell looking for a way out. Roy Blunt, I think there's Rob Portman, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, one of the senators from North Carolina, and Pat Toomey are all looking on their way out too. Ron Johnson's on his way out. So there's some opportunities there. So we can stop relying on, Joe Manchin,
right,
the most powerful senator in the country right now.
So North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I'm actually kind of like, I'm cautiously optimistic about. Missouri is a wash. Like we're not going to win Missouri. We might get more right.
Missouri's gone.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's interesting though. I don't know what's going on there. I've always thought of it as a kind of a liberal state, but
I thought so too. But it seems like it could be Texas from the north up there.
It could be Texas. It's a lot like those other states, Michigan, Minnesota, like where there's an opportunity there for the right Republican. But hopefully Johnson's kind of buffoonery will get him out of there.
Yeah,
or whoever he taps to replace him, I should say.
Well, I mean, the good thing about Pennsylvania, their lieutenant governor, he's more of a progressive. He's going to be running to fill that seat, Pat Toomey's seat. So we'll see. Pennsylvania, man, like, I don't know. Like, if it's not like a presidential election, it could go red. So we'll see. North Carolina is also like a pretty interesting swing state as well. So we'll see, man. I'm cautiously optimistic about it, but I just don't want Manchin to have any more power than he has right now.
No.
All right. So speaking of which, all right. So since we're talking about Joe Manchin, let me ask the podcast this question. Is Joe Manchin drunk with power?
Yeah. Very drunk with power. I mean, he held up the Senate vote last week on the stimulus bill or the COVID relief bill for how long? For like 12 hours.
12 hours for nothing. Like even Joe Tester was like, what are you doing?
Kind of adjustment they made for the unemployment bill.
Yeah. He just didn't want to give out more weekly aid for unemployment benefits.
And didn't want it to extend too long. He was like, I want people to go back to work. Like, bro, like an extra month isn't that big of a deal. It's not worth like holding up a bill that's going to help people right away.
Right.
Yeah. And then like, hey, if you didn't want people to sit at home and collect unemployment, maybe raise the minimum wage a little bit, right? That could be like an incentive to go back. But what do I know, right? So like
he's trash.
He's horrible. Yeah, no, you're good. So the reason why I asked is this, right? So Manchin recently came out and said he's open up to filibuster reform. It was kind of a very confusing reform that he wants. Now he doesn't want to get rid of it totally. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, I think he wants to have like, if you're going to filibuster, it has to be like 40 senators to filibuster something. But they can kind of rotate in and out basically. So that you have 40 people continuously forcing a debate. And that's going to be the filibuster rules under the Joe Manchin plan. I don't quite understand it. I think like you can still filibuster. Maybe you're not going to use it as much, but you're still going to filibuster probably major things. But that's his plan.
It's like the old school rules. I don't know if anyone watches Parks and Recreation, but there's something like that similar happen where someone just has to keep talking in order to kind of keep the filibuster going. And if they stop, then you can just kind of go to a straight majority line vote in order to get something passed. And that's what he wants to bring back. But as you said, Kev, there is a way to a workaround. But I think his quote was, I want to make it painful for people to use the filibuster. So that's his idea to kind of please everybody, which is such a centrist centrist position where he would just piss off Republicans and Democrats who want to get rid of it as well.
So my thing with that is, I think like Joe Manchin also said that like, so the next thing here is like, for example, the Democrats and Biden, they want to pass like a big infrastructure bill. And Joe Manchin already came out and said like, I'm not going to vote for it if I don't have any Republican say on this, right? And it's just like, we're not talking about school children here. We're talking about grown adults, and they're making a very conscious effort not to participate in the debate process or any process whatsoever. This is not like, hey, we're doing this on our own. This is a group that's actively saying we don't want to be a part of it. I just don't understand like why he keeps like extending this olive branch when like, they're not reaching out to grab it.
Right.
So like this whole like filibuster reform thing. It's just like, here you go again. Like you're extending this olive branch. They're not grabbing onto it. Like just scrap the damn thing and let's just move on.
Right.
Yeah. Totally agree.
All right. So let's talk about Congress here for a second. All right. So shout out to Joe Biden. It looks like he's on his way to passing his first major piece of legislation. That's going to be the COVID Relief Act. Now, before he got this passed, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, who we were just talking about earlier, he forced the poor Senate staffer to read aloud the COVID bill to help stall it. So it was like 600 pages, took a couple hours. I felt so bad for that person, but he made them do it for some reason. But the final bill is going to include direct payments. So $1,400 if you make under 75K. It's going to be like a phase out to 80K. $300 weekly boost to unemployment through September 6th. Manchin negotiated with himself down from $400. I believe up to $10,200 is going to be tax-free.
Yep.
$14 billion in payroll support for U.S. airlines. $350 billion in state and local aid. That was one thing that Republicans really hated.
Mm-hmm.
$170 billion to schools to help them reopen, and a $3,600 child tax credit. Now I see here that this introduced like new thresholds for the direct payments. Low keys incentivizes marriages. This received no Republican support. So my question for the pod is, how are we feeling about this bill? Oh,
about time. I'll go. No, I think it's about time. I mean, this is something that should have been. I know that a lot has happened, and I think the last pod or maybe 2 pods ago, I was like, oh, there's a lot going on. Biden and co can really get to it, but it's fine. It's good that we're finally here, that they're finally able to deliver something. It's not the full 2,000. It doesn't have. I would have liked to see them just kind of keep the checks coming as long as we're kind of at a certain threshold with the COVID vaccine. That would have made a lot more sense to me. But at least unemployment is there for people that need it. I think that, the $1,400 checks when they do come are going to be great for people that need them as well. The state and local aid, that's one thing I know in New Jersey that there's been a lot of like press dedicated to that. We're a state that has like high taxes and things like that. So having the money for those folks I think is important just to keep things from being cut from the government's outlays every year. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things in this bill. It's just about time. It's about time to just get something done. I am worried though that I'm shocked that no Republicans jumped on this, because like, why wouldn't you want to have that? Why wouldn't you want to be signed up for something that's going to say, hey, I'm giving money to people, I'm delivering some sort of good? And you saw that like in the immediate aftermath of the bill passing the Senate, where like I think McConnell and John Thune and even Tom Cotton were like, oh, you see that this bill passed without any sort of this is just the Democrats up to their old tricks. No Republicans could support this, even though last year we were able to do a bipartisan bill. Right. And it's like, you guys could have just signed on to this. Why didn't you just sign on to this? Like, this is popular. There was, I think, bipartisan support publicly, nationally for this. And you guys just wanted to dig in your heels for no reason. It just speaks to this idea that we can't really trust these people to govern, because they're not really interested in that. They want to make statements that where you really can't do that when people's livelihoods are on the line. And it's unfortunate that they don't really want to play. They don't want to get in the game. They just want to kind of continue doing what they've been doing, which is just obstructing good things from happening to people, or keeping the government from helping people out, which sucks.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. You know what actually kind of struck out to me though, kind of piggybacking off your point, where was Senator Mitt Romney? Where was Senator Lisa Murkowski? Because I thought those two were supposed to be like the moderate voices, even Susan Collins. Just throw Susan Collins in that mix too. Where was those three? Because those are like the guys that are supposed to come out and be like the moderate wings, like the ones that like
those are the centrist Republicans, right?
Centrist Republicans, right? And they all came out against it. Lisa Murkowski, she kind of gave like a rambling response to it. Like she agrees with the bill, but she doesn't agree with the bill. So
yeah, I think Collins had like an amendment to kind of have the bill. I think she wanted to do something like $600 or $700 million in aid, and they were going to have much stricter thresholds for delivering direct checks to people. It's like, why? Like nobody wants that. You could you could have. There's an opportunity to do good. To kind of sign on, it would have cost you nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they were still like, yeah, we're not signing in, we're not joining in on this because we're just going to run this against. And I don't know how you run this against somebody in an election. I saw Tom Cotton try to reference the Boston Marathon bomber from a few years ago getting a $1,400 check. And it's like, is that the route? That's the hill that you're going to go with? That you're going to try to say, oh, we're giving checks to people that don't deserve it, to criminals? Is that where you're going to try and take this? Like, come on. You guys have to come up with something better than that. But that's the playbook. They want to turn this into a negative, and it's like, how? Especially with all the problems that the Trump bill had. Like, I just don't get it. It's just hard to wrap my head around what they're trying to do there.
I agree. I think it's just important that we're finally getting something, and I think at times like this you kind of have to be, which is sad to say, like appreciative of a certain timeline. Like, okay, like this thing could have taken more, like longer, whatever. And we've been waiting for it for a minute. But so exactly. While. So I guess I'm just kind of fortunate, and I know like people are doing their taxes now. So, maybe now with plus that, like, whatever they might get back from taxes, will just be some relief for some people. Help people out, which is ultimately the most important thing, is that people get a form of relief so that they can take care of whatever they need to take care of.
Agreed.
I just want to say, just add one thing. I think you did a good job listing like everything that's included in the bill. One little carve out though that I saw that Senator Warren and Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey put in there for college debt, where they're just going to say if you get any sort of forgiveness from the government on your loans, that they're not going to tax that. I think that's kind of being seen as something that's going to clear the way for Biden to do a bigger kind of relief than the 10,000 that he's previously talked about. Again, there's been no update on that, but I do wonder though if he's unable to kind of do the things that he wants to do, like this infrastructure bill, if he's unable to kind of deliver the value to the people that he wants to with all these other bills that he has in mind, I do wonder if that's something that he'll go to. That's like, okay, fine. If I can't do infrastructure, immigration, or any of these other things, then I'm just going to do the student loan bill and help out these people. So that's just something to keep an eye out for going forward.
That's actually a really interesting point you brought up, because I think the White House kind of understands that like it's going to be tough to get anything passed for the Senate, especially with Manchin flexing his muscles for absolutely no reason.
And Sinema, who's apparently more conservative than Manchin on a lot of votes.
Oh my God, Twitter was killing her for her downvote. Oh my God, Twitter was just destroying her.
Just a bad look.
It's a horrible look. She should know better. She's young enough. She should know better. But so like my whole point with that is like the White House seems like they kind of know like this might be like the biggest thing they can get, because they were really hyping this bill up. I remember seeing like readouts that's like this is the most progressive bill ever since the New Deal or something like that.
Yeah, it was Bernie. Bernie's came out and said that.
Really? And I'm just like, I won't go that far,
I seen that on the press. They had a press conference today.
Yeah.
So that too. So they were talking about that.
Yeah. So it seems like they're really trying to upsell this bill. Like, this is like it is a big deal. Like, I don't get me wrong, it is a big deal, but I don't think it's going to be like as groundbreaking of a change as it was with like the New Deal, for example. Right. I don't know about all that.
I think it's fair to wonder if it's a better deal, if it's a bigger deal than Trump's tax bill, the $1.7 trillion tax cut that he enacted. If it's going to be bigger than that.
That's too early to tell. Yeah, it is.
It's another thing to kind of keep an eye on. Like, is this going to be bigger or better for the middle class than that we're just kind of learning how bad that was. So we'll see.
The child tax credits is actually going to be pretty interesting, though. I think like some parents can probably use it to help pay like daycare costs. But that is going to be kind of interesting. I think they're really pointing towards that to like kind of reduce like child poverty. I would really love if they can like at least find some way to probably eliminate the cost for school meals. I think that'll probably go a long way too. But maybe in the next major spending bill they pass next year, who knows?
Right.
Hopefully.
All right, so let's talk about the House, right? So the House just passed the George Floyd Policing Act. And what this act is going to do, this is the same one that passed under when Trump was president, but the Senate kind of rejected it. But basically what this does is that it's going to increase incentives for body cameras, ban chokeholds, create like a federal registry for police misconduct and disciplinary actions, provide a financial incentive to state and district attorneys to create like an independent process to investigate cops, reduce qualified immunity of local and state cops. And then, okay, now here's a question for the pod. Do you guys think it's actually going to do anything to prevent George Floyd from being killed by police officers?
Nah. Actually, there's nothing in here that would have prevented George Floyd from being killed.
Yeah, no.
Like, because he wasn't like they banned chokeholds, for instance. He wasn't choked.
He was, like,
an officer put his knee on his neck.
Oh yeah.
For 8 minutes. Like, come on.
Yes.
Like that's like there's nothing here that would have prevented him from being killed,
And
unfortunately.
I think that just is also kind of like telling in the sense that it's like they're not listening.
No.
Like
right.
you're not even listening to, and I think that's just something else that I kind of feel like when people do stuff like this, it's not because you actually understand the damage that you've caused or the damage that this incident has caused, but you just hear a bunch of outrage and it's like, let's just do something. Because again, it doesn't include anything that would have, so it's not really even relevant to George Floyd, or it doesn't even acknowledge the situation involving George Floyd.
Right.
So another thing here, because I think the asshole cop that killed George Floyd, I think he had a run-in with like misconduct too. I think that's kind of what threw.
And he's on trial this week.
Who's the senator from Minnesota that was the district attorney?
Klobuchar, Amy Klobuchar, the most interesting presidential candidate we've had in years.
Right. Yes.
Girl.
Right. Because like. I see that they have like I see like they have like create like a federal like registry for police misconduct and disciplinary actions, but then it's like, okay, so then now what? Because even if you show up in that list, it's like you can probably still be a cop somewhere else. You know what I mean? So this is kind of like, all right, now what?
Yeah.
I think it's like A for effort. I'm very curious if this even gets entertained in the Senate still. I think nice try, but I do think we need like a long way to go for any real change to happen.
Agreed.
All right. So Gary Gensler, President Biden's pick to head the Securities and Exchange Commission, signaled that the agency will raise pressure on corporations to disclose their political spending activities, a long-running tension between the SEC officials, big business, and Democrats. So I hope he's successful in that endeavor, because I think corporate money in politics is horrible.
Right.
It's a very nasty game. I think shouts to Sleeping Giants, I think, is an organization that's really called out a lot of these companies that support political action committees or donate to candidates who kind of support these things like gun control. I know is their big issue, but anyone who's just kind of funneling money into these like Republicans who are kind of working against the country. So I think that, if we can kind of shed more light on what these companies are doing, I think it is going to have a negative impact on them, and maybe kind of alter their behavior, which I think is what we need. Because if we're going to have unlimited campaign contributions, in terms of, money going to super PACs and kind of being able to funnel it to there, I think that you definitely have to be able to there should be some accountability there. We should know that like if Apple or Google is kind of operating in a way that's, not good for us. I just pulled those two companies out of the top of my head, but there's a lot of companies that are like that. So they should be made to pay for that, or at least put in a place where we can kind of know what they're doing and kind of react accordingly.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think this is actually probably going to hold defense contractors or the defense industry. It's going to take a huge hit to them, because for them, like they need us to go to war in order for them to make money, to show off their new weapons and stuff like that. So I think that's really going to hurt them a lot in that process. So I think, I love that initiative. I hope it's very successful. Let's keep a close eye on that. All right, let's talk about Bernie Sanders' power move in the Senate, right? So Bernie Sanders basically scheduled a minimum wage vote to pretty much ID the moderate Democrats outside of Manchin. So he ID'd Kyrsten Sinema, who we just talked about with her famous like down vote. And the 2 New Hampshire senators, the 2 Delaware senators also voted no. And then the independent Angus King, who caucuses with Democrats, also voted no.
Yeah.
So were there any like surprises there for you guys?
I don't know if there was a surprise, but I do wonder. Having both Delaware senators when the president is from Delaware kind of sends a weird signal where it's like Biden wasn't really putting in that much of an effort to get the bill across the goal line, so to speak. It's like, because I think who is it? Chris Coons. Is that how his number 2, or basically the guy that replaced him?
Yeah.
I feel like if Biden was like, yeah, go support this, then Coons would have done that. And I'm sure they had some reason. Maybe they just didn't want to work against the Senate parliamentarians' ruling, and didn't want to just kind of step over those bounds. But still, it's a weird, especially when you don't have the vote. It's weird that they kind of took that stand, especially for Sinema too. I think she has like 800,000 constituents who are on minimum wage. So to vote against having that raised to $15, I don't know. It's a weird hill.
Yeah, and as we were talking about it before, how Twitter was kind of getting at her, Twitter also dug up her old tweets when she was like a state senator, how she was pretty much demanding Congress raise the minimum wage. So it's like, it's not a good look that now you're in Congress. And like you now have the power to vote and you're voting against it, right? So she's not having a good time.
It's a funny "this you" tweet to pull that one up on her.
Yeah.
But it's appropriate, man.
Yeah, I was also really shocked by the Delaware senators for the same reasons that you had, Marcus. I was actually shocked that Joe Tester's name wasn't here. That kind of signals to me that he's actually like, he's not that bad. He's a good guy. So shout out to Joe Tester.
No, he's very liberal. It seems like I think there's a I forget what the site is, but there's a site that's kind of charts where each Republican or each congressperson kind of ranks in terms of liberal and conservative. And he's, more to like the center left than anybody. And Sinema is the furthest right of all Democratic senators. So it's just interesting how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, Kyrsten Sinema, she's a very interesting character. I'm really worried like how she's going to vote going forward, because like we might hit a scenario where like Manchin might actually be okay with altering the filibuster, but she might not be. So I'm very kind of concerned about how she's going to play out, because like to me it's like you just kind of got, how like AOC when she first got into Congress, like Nancy Pelosi was like, all right kid, like sit down, shut up, like you're new here. Right. I'm surprised that hasn't happened to Kyrsten Sinema yet. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, like you're new here. You need to like relax and slow your roll for a second.
All right.
So
yeah, especially as like Mark Kelly is the other Arizona senator. He has no problems voting for a minimum wage. So it's like the same pressures that apply to you or apply to him, and he has no problem supporting this. So what are you really trying to do here, man?
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of got me, right? So I understand like Angus King, for example, who's an independent, but like his Senate counterpart is Susan Collins, Republican. Even Joe Manchin, as much as I hate the guy, like his counterpart is Republican. Right. And like it's just like, yeah, Kyrsten Sinema, you like your counterpart's a fellow Democrat. I don't really understand like why you're like kind of bending over backwards for Republicans here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she's a plant. I have no idea. All right. So we are going to talk about Andrew Cuomo. All right. So Bill de Blasio, I love Bill de Blasio in this scenario, not overall. But Bill de Blasio is going off on Cuomo as more people are calling for Cuomo to resign. I believe it just kind of reported that 2 additional people came out saying that he kind of like acted inappropriately with them. He held like a very awkward town hall meeting. I don't know if you guys saw that. But basically, the entire town hall, he was just taking questions from people. I don't know how random the questions were, but he said that he's just not going to resign and that he's sorry for making people feel awkward.
And he would sign a bill to limit his executive power, but he would not resign.
He will not resign, correct. And I believe the president of the Senate in New York, or maybe a high-ranking senator in New York, has just called for Cuomo to resign. So it seems like the pressure's really getting up.
I'll just say the irony of all this coming out right now is that it's Women's Month. It's
That's true.
it's Women's History Month. Today is International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all the ladies. But I feel like now people pay more attention to these type of stories. Like, and I think that's just kind of been on the up and up from the whole beginning of the Me Too movement, is that nowadays more people, you know, you're starting to find out that more women have been through this.
Mm-hmm.
And smaller situations, whether it's just, you know, making someone sexually uncomfortable in the workplace, or having, you know, a superior try to take advantage of, whatever the case may be. And I think more people are recognizing, like, wow, like this has happened to me too, and you guys can't get away with it. So I feel like if you are saying, or if even, it was kind of interesting to me that he acknowledged that some of the things may have been inappropriate. And I feel like if you can acknowledge that, then you can recognize why people would be calling for your resignation. You know, I think a lot of people think an apology will do the trick, but it's like an apology really doesn't give these women any justice or any, you know, kind of closure about the situation. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you that the governor has done this to me. Yet every time I turn on the news, it's him. He's there because, you know, it's like you don't care about what I'm telling you he did, and that's why he's still able to be the governor, which I think is very hurtful, especially as a woman, because these stories are like, you hear them way too often.
Yes.
Where it's like, you know, you report something after years of keeping it to yourself because of the very fear that no one would believe you or that nothing would come of it, only for you to muster up the courage to even speak out. And then it's kind of like, well, okay, Anne.
Yeah. So what kind of surprised me in all this, and please check me if I'm like out of bounds here, Kristen Gillibrand, the U.S. Senator for New York, has been oddly quiet about all this. And I do remember like back in the day when Senator Al Franken from Minnesota had not similar allegations. There are two separate scenarios. He acted inappropriate around a female coworker. But Kristen Gillibrand kind of led the charge to have him resign from the Senate. Where is that same energy now for Andrew Cuomo when like there are now more victims at play and it's actually more recent too?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
I just looked it up, Kev. She did call for an investigation last week.
Oh.
Okay.
And she did say that the allegations are completely unacceptable. I remember her going much further though on Franken, to your point though. So
right.
It does seem weird that her and even Chuck Schumer as well. Like, you're the senator from New York. You can also speak up here as well and kind of hold your guy accountable.
You know what also else is interesting to me is that it's kind of like these kind of things like kind of go exactly the same every single time. Where it's like, you know, the person gets accused of this, and then it's like, you know, well, we'll look into it. We'll get to the bottom of it. And then it's like you ask like some simple questions like, did you do it? No. Okay, well, we like investigated, and it was like, you know, and they just keep going on because it's like it was like with Clarence Thomas, like Brent Kavanaugh. It was kind of like nothing happened. I feel like in those situations, it was like, yeah, maybe at a much larger scale, but at the end of the day, we're still talking about sexual assault or just I think a lot of people misconstrue the definition of sexual assault. Like they think it's like has to be violent or aggressive or like rape.
Right.
But sexual assault can be, you know, verbal. It could be physical. Like you can say things to me at work or, you know, that make me uncomfortable. And I'm telling you that this is making me uncomfortable and you continue to do it, that like you're violating me.
Yeah.
And I think that in any situation, when you violate someone, simply saying sorry because you're getting backlash, not because I feel like if you were sorry, you should have, and you knew that it was inappropriate, you should have acknowledged it in the moment or, you know, shortly thereafter it happened. Which I feel like is my issue, is that it's almost like when it gets called out is when it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But that's not personal. Like I don't feel like that does anything for the person who speaks out. So
It's only sorry too after the second or third allegation.
Yes,
it's not like
even
right
sorry
after
to the first one.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not. It's like, you kind of wait to see, like, is it just you or is it others? Because if it's just you, I don't have to own up to it because it's your word against mine. But then it's like once there's 2, 3, 4 other people to validate that first person story, it's like, oh, I'm in trouble now because more people are probably going to believe the 4 of you versus me, and now I have to get in front of the story and apologize.
Yeah, I'm just like kind of baffled by like how much pull Cuomo had. I know Ryan was alluding to this last pod, like how powerful the Cuomo family name is in New York, but it's just getting to the point where it's like we're at number 5 right now.
Right.
You kind of like, we kind of like replaced Trump, we've passed the Trump era now, yet we have like a Trumpian Democrat in New York. We gotta get him to go. We gotta get rid of him.
Like the calls are coming for him to go. So,
he has to go. He has to go.
It's unacceptable. This is one of the disappointing things too about the Me Too movement. Like, they were supposed to kind of put an end to this sort of stuff, and for it to kind of continue on like this, it's like,
it was almost supposed to be like a magnifying glass in the sense that it's like we're zeroing in on these people who do these things, so that it kind of deters others from doing it because you too could face the same consequences. But it's very unfortunate that these things kind of like, shrugged upon. It's almost, you kind of almost get a sense of how it's going to play out, which is, very unfortunate because for some people it's like a political thing, it's a image thing, but these are like their lives. Like, this is something that has happened to me that has really affected me. And for you, it's like something that you did that you are embarrassed of, or you're, disappointed in yourself for doing. But, I feel embarrassed. I feel humiliated. I feel violated. I feel all these things. And I just think if people were more compassionate and came from a place of like human being to human being, instead of what can I say to you to make it sound good and look good so that people will believe that I'm really sorry, rather just coming and being genuine and just saying like, I messed up. And because I messed up, I have to, deal with the consequences, which means, stepping down or, whatever. But it's like, you see how these whole things happen. And then it's kind of like, if anything, they advance.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have success following it, which is, again, to the detriment of the person who is the one suffering in the first place. So it's unfortunate, too, because it's like, it's really no excuse. But, I'm interested to see how this, if it's, hopefully it's not more, because I'm hoping he wasn't like, really behaving like this. But, I hope that we start to pay more attention to like these people and what they're doing instead of looking at them for who they are, because it's kind of unfortunate that we're still having to deal with these type of scandals.
Yeah, for sure. And I also want to allude to the fact it's not only sexual assault scandals and sexual harassment scandals. It's also his handling of the nursing home situation.
Yeah.
During COVID-19.
Which has totally kind of been thrown to the wayside, which is what I alluded to before. It's like, if someone's kind of powerful to kind of, fight this sexual harassment charge, like, are they going to also kind of throw this investigation into the nursing home deaths under the bus as well? It's very dicey. And one of his lawyers just kind of resigned from the administration as well, which isn't a good sign for him. So it's time to hold him accountable.
It's the sweeping under the rug. It's like,
it's the cover up. It's all. It's
like, this doesn't look nice. This is not going to paint me in a good picture. Get rid of it. And it's like, what about the people that this affect because you just chose to do it? And it's like, you had a reason for why you did it.
Right.
And it could have been because I thought I would get away with it, or because I wanted to, or because I thought it was going to be, better for the state or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, you did it, you got caught.
Right.
And for them, it's like, oh, I got caught, I'm a lose. I feel like I'm gonna lose everything. Rather than it's like, damn, like, I really did something that really was messed up and just like disgusting for no reason. And it has hurt people.
Oh yeah. No,
and now let me, and and I feel like if you truly want to show compassion, like don't try to pick up the pieces, by hosting a press tour or whatever, a press conference, but like go fix it. Like go make it better. Don't tell me you want to make it better. Don't say that you're sorry. Like just fix it or explain like I did it for this reason and I know I'm wrong and whatever. But it's always something that is like, oh wow, it's the moment, it's talked about right now. But then a month from now, when something more important or something more pressing, it's like, okay, we can forget about that. When no, because these are people who have to then deal with like the picking of the pieces for something that they didn't even cause. And that's not cool.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said for sure. Let's move on to a lighter topic. So I'm still going to go on my free Cuomo wave. So if I challenge you guys to now go to IG, go to the VP's IG page and see what her most recent post is. It's going to be her walking into the new week. Yeah. That was her post. Is walking into the new week. Again, nothing like big or major, like nothing at all. Just her walking.
I've got to say, Biden kind of posts the same kind of images as well. So it must be their social strategy or their communication strategy is to show them, just walking around and doing stuff, which, again, it's an upgrade to having, someone tweet out that we're going to go to war, but it's also like, what are we doing?
We're on
here?
the move. We're walking to.
We're moving forward,
Yes,
I guess,
like these type of things. Oh,
bro, I just like I saw Biden like release like the $1.9 trillion bill on CNN now, and like Cuomo's just there standing behind him and like just nodding along. It's like free this poor woman, You
say free the poor woman. She was just at the All-Star game doing an interview yesterday. All right, with Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, pandering. Oh, okay. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that now. Let's talk about the NBA's half-ass attempt at acknowledging HBCUs.
Wow.
Yes.
We're calling it. Wow. Yeah. Harsh.
It was like
I will say this.
It's very harsh.
I will say this. If you tell me that the NBA chose to highlight, these HBCUs because they hosted the All-Star game in Atlanta, so it's like we're giving you the best HBCUs of Atlanta, which is the AUC. I'll be like, okay, it ties into the theme,
right?
But so that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt. Right. But it would be nice. But I also thought it was like, also two other schools because of the Quavo and the Jack Harlow, they won the game, so they donated to HBCUs in their hometowns. Jack Harlow's from Kentucky. The two schools he donated to, I had never heard of.
Right. No, it did give awareness to a lot of schools. I'll give them that. But I have the mindset that if you're going to do something, go big or go home.
Right.
And you are in a city with 3 HBCUs. I thought they could at least like maybe had their names on the court. Maybe bringing their local bands out, like
you
do
like
something.
A bigger production.
Hell yeah. And like, there was no one in the arena anyways. Let's just play in like at one of those HBC arenas, right? Like, like since there's no fans, just monitors all around because the NBA all of a sudden cares about COVID, but has like All-Star game in Atlanta, they could have done a little bit more.
I think they did more than enough. Like I can't remember the last time I can't remember the last time a major sports league gave that kind of money to an institution of its own. Like you might hear about individual owners giving money. Like I know Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, gives money to the University of Michigan all the time. But you don't ever hear about a league just kind of saying, okay, we're going to pick out a conference and just give them money. So this is kind of unprecedented. And the NBA does have a link with HBCUs as well. Their former commissioner, David Stern, was the head of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And I think the league has given like $300 million over the lifetime of that organization. And he was sitting on the board. So they've been giving money. And I think they just got all of this exposure too. Like I don't want to shortchange that. Like no one was thinking about HBCUs like that unless you're going to one. I don't know how many people were kind of thinking about HBCUs at all. That was not on the forefront of my mind at all. But now the last week and seeing stories, there was a really good piece on the Undefeated talking about when are we going to see the next NBA player from the HBCU because there's only one right now. It's one of those things you know what? That's a good point. like it kind of brings these things like to the forefront of like people to think about, and they weren't really doing that before. You talked about having Atlanta HBCUs on the court. Well, they had like artists, I think, from the HBCUs kind of come together and design the court. So they kind of they didn't want to like single out Atlanta. They kind of wanted the whole kind of institution of an HBCU kind of featured here. And I think it's a lot, and I get the kind of wanting to go big, and I do think that they shouldn't have had the game in the first place. But if you're going to do it, I have no problem with them doing it the way that they did it. I thought it was good that they can kind of work. And I know Chris Paul's a big part of that, the head of the players union. I think him kind of like making sure that they do this and kind of get the voice out or get the exposure on the institution is a good thing. In the long run, it's going to be very valuable as well.
Look, my beef with Chris Paul, my man went out of his way to go to what was it? Wake Forest? I want to say
Wake Forest, which Wake Forest was a good school.
It's Winston-Salem.
Oh, he's at Winston-Salem now, but he went to school. He went to school at Wake Forest, and now he's getting his degree.
Oh, is he from Winston-Salem?
No, he's from. He might be from the town. He's from. I think he's from the town, but he went to school when he's in college, coming out of high school.
But Wake Forest is in Winston too.
It's in that like Durham,
that
Chapel Hill kind of area, right? Yeah, the Research Triangle School. I think Winston-Salem might also be there as well. Mm-hmm. And he's working on a documentary with Stephen A. Smith about I think North Carolina Central as well. So
that's who
he's doing a lot of good work.
Stephen A. Smith went to Winston-Salem State. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm sorry. But yeah, so for me, it's I didn't know the point. I didn't know how it tied in, but if it worked out and it gave, some exposure or whatever, then hey.
The Canadian Incorporated schools more in Atlanta. I'm just gonna die on that hill.
No, when they're in DC, Kev, they should definitely do something with Howard,
right?
And even working a Hampton angle as well. Why not? Or there's another school out there. Was it Southeastern?
No, Hampton's in Virginia. They're good. They're okay.
They're in Virginia. The DMV. Howard get Hampton
as
well. All right, get them all involved.
Wow, we got the vice president, so.
Yeah, we'll make her the official, like unofficial ref or something. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, they had 3 HBCU graduates who are referees as well. So shouts to them for doing that. So
yeah,
a lot of really good tie-ins. I thought. I don't know.
There was a lot of good exposure to HBCUs. Just me being me, I just kind of was like, oh man, we had such a good idea. Let's just go all out for it,
Right.
Well, you're Mr. HBCU now. You start going to Howard and you got to like put on for your school. So I get it.
Yes. I'm trying to disassociate myself from my PWI ties.
Okay.
So, all right. That's all we had today for the podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this episode, please let us know on Twitter. Also, please share it with like a friend or family member because we are still trying to grow this thing. Please follow us on Twitter. I want to give a special shout out to my co-hosts for a great podcast today. I want to give a special shout out to producer Yao in the background. Special shout out to Ryan. He was in our thoughts and prayers today. That's all I have for the podcast, guys. And we're out.
All right, we out.